All right, my name is April Wolf. I'm the Therapeutic Recreation Specialist for City of Reno. I just want to thank everybody for joining us for our virtual spinal cord injury lunch and learn. This is brought to you by City of Reno, the High Fives Foundation, Renown Health, and VA Sierra Nevada Healthcare System. So each month we are bringing a topic-based speaker related to spinal cord injury to you each month virtually. We'll be posting this to our website as well as to our Facebook group. So if you have somebody that would like to see it in the future, you can access it in one of those two locations. If you have future topic ideas, I ask that you just dump them in the chat and we'll monitor that so that we can reach out to future speakers. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to this month's speaker. This month's speaker is Ashley Klein from Renown Health. She is an outpatient physical therapist and will be talking to us today about wheelchairs. So I'm going to turn it over to Ashley.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. I am going to pull up my sharing my screen here. So yes, again, my name is Ashley Klein. I'm a physical therapist with outpatient Renown. I have been practicing for about 10 years, mostly in the neuro realm. And so therefore with that patient population, I've done wheelchair evaluations most of my career. However, as you can see on this title page, I've put this presentation together with the input from Lynn Cocklicky, who is the primary specialty wheelchair evaluator at Renown Outpatient, as well as with Jen Bethel, who is one of the local assistive technology practitioners at New Motion, who we work with regularly. And I did this for two reasons. First is that I transitioned to per diem this year, and so I'm not completing wheelchair evaluations as often. But also because I rely heavily on the ATPs to keep me up to date with constantly changing wheelchair technology and insurance requirements, because there's no way as a PT I can stay up to date on everything. So today I put together this presentation to discuss frequently asked questions that I as a physical therapist get about wheelchairs with the hopes that you, the user, has more knowledge about the wheelchair process and different components of the chair. But again, you'll see I refer to the ATP frequently, and so they might be the best person to ask some of the questions about components. But feel free at any point to put in questions in the chat or interrupt me, unmute yourself, because even though this is a formal looking presentation, it's really just for open discussion. And so no problem to interrupt.
Actually, so it looks like your PowerPoint's not in present mode too. So on our end,
not? Oh, okay.
It's showing your slides on the side.
Let's try again. Is that any better?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So the number one question I get asked is, when can I get a new wheelchair? So, and I know there's a couple of people on here that are at the rehab hospital, and so this doesn't specifically apply to you, but it's good knowledge for the future. So most insurances go off of CMS guidelines, and CMS is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And most insurances look to CMS for tuition, or not tuition, oh my goodness, treatment reimbursement, and again, wheelchairs. So in general, CMS says that a new wheelchair can be obtained if the chair is 5 years or older, if there's been a significant change in function, or, and I put this one in asterisks because I'm guessing nobody really applies to this, but if you fall into a pediatric category. So under the age of 18, it's assumed that you are rapidly growing and your body is changing. So a wheelchair may be needed more frequently. And then as far as examples for a significant change in function, so again, in the spinal cord injury realm, thinking if there was a traumatic injury to your upper extremity impacting your ability to propel your wheelchair, or let's say you went through acute care and inpatient rehab relatively quickly, discharged home because you were doing well, but maybe still have some spontaneous recovery occurring because the inflammation around your spinal cord is decreasing. So maybe transitioning from a power wheelchair to a manual wheelchair if there's, again, that significant change in function. If none of these criteria fit, then I would recommend reaching out to your wheelchair provider for any kind of assistance on what can be modified or if things that need some maintenance. And I did want to comment just because I know, or I can only imagine how crazy it is going through acute care and inpatient rehab and dealing with all of the changes in your life. So you might not remember exactly who your ATP or wheelchair provider is. So do know that most of the time they put a sticker on your chair with contact information so that, again, if all of that went in one ear and out the other, then at least you have you know who you need to reach out to. So then the process for getting a new wheelchair, if you do meet that criteria. So the first thing that would happen, and again, I'm speaking to the outpatient realm, so assuming that a wheelchair is already obtained. But so in that situation, you would get a face-to-face mobility evaluation. So that would be with the primary care provider or the person who is managing your spinal cord injury diagnosis. And a face-to-face is just a fancy way of saying that you're going into their office and talking with them, and they're completing appropriate office notes. So they're going to include in their office notes appropriate diagnosis that would classify you as potentially needing a wheelchair, your mobility status, and also comment on ruling out a lesser mobility option. They would then write a referral for a wheelchair. So if that provider is in the Renown system, that referral automatically comes to us in the outpatient therapy. However, I did want to comment, if you are outside of Renown, as far as a doctor goes, and you're seeing a physical therapist or an occupational therapist outside of the Renown system, that's definitely somebody you can go to. I would just say, please make sure that they are versed in wheelchair evaluations and they know exactly what needs to be included in the letter of medical necessity and are up to date on all of the equipment. Because again, 5 years is a long time. And so I would hate for you to get equipment that you don't need or wasn't considered, or again, if they aren't versed in the letter of medical necessity, it may take them longer to complete it and delay the process of getting your chair. So once we get the referral, an appointment for an evaluation with a physical therapist can do this evaluation, or an occupational therapist, as well as that would take place with a seating and mobility specialist or an assistive technology practitioner, ATP. Same, just sometimes they, ATP is usually what like New Motion uses. So that's what I'm putting here in most of the slides. And I was going to go through that evaluation again, just because that's my normal involvement. So I'll go through that in the next slide. A home evaluation is also required for insurance to ensure that the equipment that we order will actually function within your home environment. So if there's really not any concerns, that home evaluation can be completed at time of delivery of the chair. But if there are concerns, the ATP would go out to your home, do any kind of measurements, talk about any kind of options before the chair is even ordered. So then we wait, unfortunately. it typically takes about 6 to 8 weeks to get your wheelchair. So that includes as the PT/OT writing that letter of medical necessity, sending it to the doctor. The doctor has to sign off on it. The ATP has to get insurance authorization, and then we have to order each component. So if you think about it, the frame is ordered from one company, the backrest is ordered from another company, the casters are ordered from another company. So waiting for all of those pieces to come in, then assembling that chair. So that's why we're looking at about 6 to 8 weeks. When I was chatting with Jen Bethel, she did say that unfortunately, because of product shortages this year, it's taking about 12 weeks to obtain all of the pieces, which is quite unfortunate. But thanks COVID for multiple things. But then once all of those pieces are delivered and your wheelchair is completely assembled, so the ATP usually comes out to your home, delivers it, and goes over each of the components within your home. So what does that evaluation look like with the PT and again, or the OT and the ATP? So we first get a subjective history. So that means we're asking you questions, you're giving us the answers. So giving us input about any kind of pain that you're in, surgeries, any falls, skin breakdown because of incontinence issues, edema, the hours that you spend in your wheelchair, the assistance that you need to complete your daily activities, so either by a caregiver or by adaptive equipment, your ability to transport a chair. So that's really important if we're going to recommend a power wheelchair. Are you even going to be able to move it around outside of your home? Any kind of comorbidities. So for example, do you have a heart condition that would impact your endurance with propelling a wheelchair? And then again, because I'm in the outpatient, my primary question, because you're coming in with a wheelchair, is what do you like about your chair and what do you not like? And so what do we need to modify, or what do you really want to keep the same? Then the objective evaluation component is looking at specific tests and measures. So I'm going to take a look at your range of motion, your tone and spasticity, your strength, your balance, your vitals with activity, and then your functional mobility. So your transfers, your ability to complete pressure relief independently, your propulsion, etc. The ATP will do all of the measurements that are shown on this picture here to make sure that the chair is really custom fit to you. They also have equipment so that we could do pressure mapping if that's appropriate. So pressure mapping would be appropriate if you have a pelvic obliquity, so meaning that your pelvis is rotated, you have scoliosis, so there's more pressure on one side versus the other. If you have frequent skin breakdown and wound issues, we can look at if there's pressure specifically on one part of your bottoms that's causing frequent wear and tear. So that pressure mapping is, again, equipment that ATP usually has. And then again, they'll do that home evaluation with you. So measuring any kind of doorways, making sure you have the sufficient circumference, especially for turning and bathrooms, etc. So once we obtain all of that information, again, I as a PT or OT is going to write up that wheelchair letter of medical necessity. That usually is completed the same day, maybe the next day, and then sent off to the doctor. So we try and get that letter completed as quickly as possible so that we're not slowing down the process by any means. So then I listed out a lot of different wheelchair components. So on this page, I tried to say what is pretty standard. We may still have to justify certain things and indicate why we would choose, a specific type of wheel locks or a specific type of armrests, or if you really need lateral trunk support. So these are pretty standard. And then this next slide, I included additional accessories that might not be covered by insurance, but that's not always true. So I wanted to just talk about some of the components that I get the most questions about. But if there's anything on these lists that you are dying to know more about, please feel free to again ask. And I will also throw out there that, again, the ATP is going to be the one who is completely versed in insurance requirements and what they will and will not cover. So I might just defer to them for some of the questions if you have specifics about, you know, extra Velcro or whatnot. So the primary question that I always get is titanium versus aluminum chair. And honestly, there's no great answer. I think it more depends on the user, which is challenging because you don't really know until you try. And so finding within this support group probably is the best way to ask others of what kind of chair they have and what do they like or not like, and even if you can take a spin around in it. So again, just information for you. Titanium has a higher strength to weight ratio, so it's usually lighter. But some users report feeling a little bit of a flex as they go over rougher terrain. Some people like that, some people don't. So again, it's based on user. Aluminum is easier to work with and cheaper. They use less of it because it's a little stronger. So unfortunately, then it can be bent a little bit easier. So again, both have pros and cons. I honestly think it's going to be about trial and error. Hopefully at the rehab hospital, they have a couple of different types so you can try that out. Or again, finding somebody within the community that you're able to ask questions about and maybe even get a feel of. Another question I get is about seat cushions. So I am happy to share this PowerPoint, by the way, because I do not want to read every word on this slide. So if you have more specific questions, I can share this with April or Sean. So foam is something that I'm going to say typically is not ordered for this patient population because foam breaks down easily. It maintains moisture in the event of incontinence. It would just need to be replaced very often because of that bottoming out. So even though it's inexpensive, it would add up and not do well for those that use wheelchairs long-term or frequently. So usually what I do see is gel. So that has a foam base and a gel top. So it distributes pressure much better and really adapts to the user, kind of forming around them. It is heavier and it also, you know, again, forms around the user. So I think it's recommended that every time you transfer out of your chair, you kind of need the gel to reposition it back in place. And then because it is gel, so again, a compliant surface, it's a little bit less stable for those who have a higher injury. Air is also a really good option, especially if you're constantly dealing with wounds. So it distributes weight or distributes pressure and has adjustable firmness. So this is something, again, we would use for wounds or if there is any kind of pelvic obliquity, scoliosis, et cetera, because we can really custom it to you. The hard part about the air is, you know, again, you have to think of kind of like a bike tire. With use, the air is going to come out. So recommended daily checks to make sure that you're meeting the specific pressure and firmness for you. Another type of cushion that I've seen is a honeycomb or more of like a urethane product. So it's really good at distributing pressure. It's called honeycomb. So thinking of that beehive, so it transports air through it easier, so it keeps tissues cooler. Good at shock absorption, but again, it's a little bit more on the expensive side. Hand rims, again, there's so many products out there that I there's no way that I could list all of them or have knowledge about all of them. So I did put on here, ATP is by far the best person to ask. We will take a look at your grip strength during our evaluation and determine if something extra would be beneficial. Usually these are upgrades and not covered by insurance, though, unfortunately. I decided to put this information about a power elevating seat in here just because, again, I feel like if you don't know to ask these questions. And I don't feel like this is seen very often, but this is an option. So basically, just as it sounds like, the entire seat will rise up and elevate, which I think the biggest benefit is that you can look people in the eye, you can reach higher cabinets, you can do things a little bit maybe more independently. It is usually not covered by insurance, and only certain wheelchair manufacturers actually have this as an option. And those that do have it as an option, they either offer the power elevating seat or an anterior tilt feature. And so I also should, I guess, explain an anterior tilt is where the entire seat kind of tilts forward. So that makes it easier for transfers, or even thinking about if you want to come up to a chair that the power chair would fit, or I'm sorry, a table, the power chair would fit underneath the table so that you can be closer to that table. So most manufacturers either offer one or the other. Again, the ATP is the best resource for knowing which manufacturers even offer this, and if there's the possibility of getting it covered by insurance. The power assist options are, again, also another area that I get lots of questions about. The Smart Drive is just one example of this product. It's honestly really great. I see a lot of people utilizing it more and more often, and it seems to really make their day-to-day much easier, as well as less strain on their body. So as you can see, it kind of attaches to that rear axle, and it's easy to reach around behind the manual chair and grab it. It only weighs about 12.5 pounds, so really easily fit in a backpack or something if you're not using it. The caveat here is that Medicare will not approve it until you've been in a manual chair for 1 year. And typically we have to justify it with saying that you're having some kind of shoulder pain or fatigue with propulsion. If people do not want to wait a year, it's about $5,000 out of pocket. And again, I feel like it's becoming more and more common to see this. So you might have seen it already with others, but there's a wristband that helps to start and stop it. It adjusts the amount of power based on how hard you're pushing the wheels. So again, makes your life much easier. The ATP can also adjust the sensitivity and the speed. So again, it's really custom fit to you and what you're comfortable with using. Tire options, again, is another question that I get asked frequently. So a manual chair, you're going to be looking at pneumatic or urethane. With a power chair, they're just going to use that foam option on the right of your screen. So it can hold up to 400 pounds. It's maintenance free. So it really is the only option there for a power chair. For a manual chair, so again, it depends on what you're going to be using the chair for. So pneumatic is air filled, so you have to think of a bike tire. So it's really good going over rough terrain, as it's a really good shock absorber because it's filled with air. It's very light, but because it's filled with air, it requires a lot of maintenance. So checking that air pressure, fixing a flat, etc. The urethane or that rubber option is great because it's puncture proof, and so therefore low maintenance. It's really good for indoor use, and they use it a lot with any kind of sporting activities. But you're going to feel every single bump you go over if you're going outside or over rougher terrain. They're also a little bit heavier. So again, just adds weight to your chair, weight to what you're pushing around all day. So again, I feel like this is all information to you. You're going to be the best decision maker on what actually will work well for your chair. And then the last component that I feel like I'm getting more and more questions on is the front suspension. So one product out there is called the frog legs. So thinking about it, exactly what it sounds like, you're getting a little bit of bounce every time that you're going over any kind of rough terrain or curb or even a groove in a concrete. So it's really designed to dissipate any kind of vibrations that you experience on the day-to-day. As well as you can see in this picture, most of them have the wheel back a little bit, so it makes it for a tighter turning radius. I think in one of the articles that I read is that 80% of the vibrations of the frame actually originate from that front caster. And with doing some kind of front suspension, it decreases like 75% of the vibration. So it can really take some of that extra strain off of your body on the day-to-day. Again, unfortunately, this isn't covered by insurance because they're assuming that, oh, you're going over rougher terrain with your wheelchair. That's not necessary in the day-to-day. So that was all of the components that I get questions, or most frequently questions about. Was there any other components that anybody had specific questions on?
If you have any questions, you're welcome to take yourself off mute if you'd like to ask Ashley.
So the one thing I do want to make sure to emphasize is that, again, you're in a chair for 5 years, but please don't ever feel stuck in your chair. Reach out to your ATP, see if there's anything that can be modified, because I've seen so many times that people will get rid of their chair or buy something off of Craigslist, and it just, you really should have something that's more custom fit to you, and it can cause more problems down the road. So definitely ask your ATP or your DME provider before getting rid of your chair.
Ashley, it looks like we have a question.
Bruno. Just one question for me, April. David here.
David.
I have an old chair and older frog legs, probably the first generation frog legs.
Okay.
If anybody has any parts out there, let me know, please.
Perfect.
I would love to replace them.
So Ashley, I guess that's probably a good question. So does insurance cover replacement parts as you go down like through that 5-year span and, you know, stuff breaks or needs to be replaced? Is that an option through insurance, or is that all going to be out of pocket?
I feel like sometimes it is an option and sometimes it's not. Again, I wish that I could speak more to that, but I think the ATP is going to be the most up to date on what your insurance will allow.
If you have a chair, or if you want to chair a specific model or brand, and your provider or DME, I forget who it is around here, but they don't provide that, is there another way to get the chair you want?
There's multiple providers here in town. So I would say if you're looking for one in particular, I mean, there's a couple of different companies that do wheelchair here in town.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I think the question is, so there's a lot more like custom wheelchair builders that have come out that unfortunately, you know, folks are looking to get that type of wheelchair, but that unless it's kind of the bigger companies, they're not covered by insurance, and whether there's maybe other sources of funding in order to be able to cover those other, you know, more custom wheelchairs.
Yeah, like a hands-on concept or a mic box chair or something.
Yeah, and if it's not covered by insurance, then, you know, again, it's really challenging. Obviously, there's so many options out there now with social media and GoFundMe and whatnot. I don't know if that's specifically answering your question, but if it's not covered by insurance or carried by a specific provider here in town because they can't get an insurance contract with it, then I think going that personal route, unfortunately.
Thank you.
I have a question. Who in town, besides New Motion, who does manual chairs?
Oh my goodness. I feel like as soon as I said that, I was like, oh, great. Now I can't remember the other places.
Excellence is just like power chairs, right? I don't think they do.
Say that again.
I think, isn't Excellence only power chairs?
Yeah. They would say that.
But I don't know.
There's multiple places that I know that through Renown they have used, and we've just had quicker response, better communication with New Motion, and so we frequently use them. But yes, that doesn't mean that they're the only company. Gosh, I feel like it's on the tip of my tongue, the other one that I'm thinking of, and I honestly,
MedTech used to be kind of a provider for everybody. I know I think they're only doing contracts with veterans. I think they've changed kind of who they work with compared to in the past.
They usually do only cash.
Yep.
oh, okay.
Cash or VA related
Yeah.
purchases, yes.
Some of the orthotists, prosthetists might also do some of that type of ordering.
Yeah, and anybody who, I mean, this next slide that I was going to bring up, you know, there's a lot of different companies that are going to do basic DME equipment as well. And so there's so many companies out there that you could reach out to see if there's specific components within your chair that they might cover.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention on here too that there are other things that you may need a physical therapy evaluation for. And so I put on here, you know, a standing frame, a Hoyer lift, a hospital bed where you might need a referral and an evaluation with us. But again, there's so many companies out there making sure that you're getting the equipment that you need to make everyday things easier. I did put my contact information on here. And again, I'm happy to share this PowerPoint as well as ask, you know, who the other providers are and send that out to April and Sean to pass on to you guys. I'm so sorry that I'm having like a complete brain fart right now.
I just want to thank Ashley for her time in presenting this material. If you have any additional questions, feel free to take yourself off mute and take this opportunity to ask them.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Great.
And again, I'll just forward you guys this information, April and Sean, and that way you can pass it on to if anybody's interested.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right, again, thank you for your time today. And if you have any future topics you would like us to host in the future, if you could drop them in the chat, we'd be happy to find a speaker.
Department, or you have in the chat.